The committee will come back to order. The chair recognizes Ms. Bordallo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this meeting. Secretary Hagel and Lieutenant General Mayfield, thank you for appearing this morning and this afternoon before this committee, and I thank you for your steadfast leadership and dedication to service. And I want to go on record as saying that I applaud the President for his 4-point strategy to defeat ISIL. Now, the first question I have is, as you can imagine, talk of these actions against ISIL have stoked some concern in the Asia-Pacific region that the rebalanced strategy will be abandoned or not fulfilled. I don't necessarily share these concerns, but I was hoping that you might be able to touch on how we balance our efforts to degrade and destroy ISIL and meanwhile keep to our commitments in the rebalanced strategy in the Asia-Pacific area. Secretary Hagel?
Congresswoman, thank you, and I think your question is an important one because as we all know, the world is faced with many threats. America is faced with many threats, and we always have to keep in mind all of our interests around the world, and certainly the rebalance to Asia-Pacific is one very clear commitment and interest we have. Our efforts against ISIL will not affect our commitment to Asia-Pacific, as the President has made very clear. That commitment, that rebalancing will continue, and I think we have, over the last couple of years in particular, have made great progress as we have enhanced our relationships and partnerships in your part of the world, and very much appreciate Guam's role in all of this, because you are a key area, and the people that you represent, I want to also thank for their hospitality to all of our men and women who serve there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary, and I thank you for your very direct answer to my question. The other one is, I noted on Tuesday that Chairman Dempsey talked about how this is a generation problem, and this battle against ISIL will be a protracted war. And with that in mind, what is the exit strategy for U.S. service members? If we are doing our job right over there, at some point, our training teams should work themselves out of a job as the countries in the Middle East take on these roles. So what is the plan for the exit?
You're correct that our role and our work with our partners is with an exit in mind, but let's start with what we're doing and how we're doing it. First, the responsibility for bringing Iraq back into a strong position to defend itself is the responsibility of the Iraqis. The Iraqi security forces, Peshmerga, the government, the new government of Prime Minister Abadi, and bringing all the various segments of that country together. So it's not our responsibility. We're going to help them do that. We're going to support them in their efforts to do that. We will keep, obviously, some contingency of force there, but this is a different situation than we've had before. It is their responsibility and their fight, but we'll help them.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. I really appreciate your answers to my questions, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes himself for 4 minutes. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being patient with us. We had a series of votes, and there were some of us that didn't have a chance to ask you some questions. We appreciate your sticking around for this. I voted for the McKeon Amendment yesterday, but I recognized in doing so that it was one element, and it has a limited duration, and we'll be back to, at the very least, consider what we're going to do about that one element. But obviously, it's one element of what is going to be a much bigger strategy, and the President has some key decisions to make there. We heard you talk about some of those today. My first question is it the President's intent, your intent, to come back to us with a bigger strategy, the full strategy, so we can understand how that element and other elements fit together and operate together? And if so, will you bring that back with a new AUMF? Because there are a lot of us that believe that there needs to be a new AUMF, and we can get into the legal arguments about it, but as a matter of good policy, would you think that in addition to just giving us a strategy, there should be an AUMF that accompanies it?
Congressman, thank you. On the AUMF, as you've heard me say this morning and what the President has said, he believes he has the authority to do what he needs to do to keep this country safe and to degrade and defeat ISIL within the statutory authority that now exists. He's also said, as I've said, that he would welcome the President or the Congress's involvement, would welcome a rewrite of any of those authorizations. That's up to the Congress. But in the meantime, he feels strongly that he needs to take action on these threats now. As to strategy, the strategy that the President generally laid out to the American people last week, as I am up here testifying on today, so Secretary Kerry is as well, has been. I was in the Senate a couple of days ago, as you know. Other cabinet members have been up. We've been up briefing over the last 2 weeks, as you know, in closed-door sessions, and I'm sure you've been part of those briefings, all in an effort to further define and bring some clarity to the strategy. How are we implementing it? What resources we're going to continue to need? What are the dynamics to each of these? So I don't think the strategy changes. Obviously, as we comply with the continuing resolution limits having to come back in December with more information, and I suspect in the next 3 months we'll have more fidelity and clarity on a number of things. As you know, these are fluid and dynamic challenges. We have to be prepared for that, be ready for that. So the basic strategy I don't think is going to change or shift, but as we evolve in our requirements and how we're implementing that strategy will, I suspect, by necessity, be redefined and changed and shifted, just the tactics of how we're implementing it.
Well, let me offer this observation, not advice, just an observation. And listening to my colleagues in the House as we were debating the amendment, as we were talking among ourselves, I think it would be very helpful to you in getting successful votes in the future if there was a clearly articulated strategy, complete, comprehensive strategy. And I think it would equally help if it was accompanied with a new AUMF. There are some of us that took the vote yesterday knowing that it was of a limited time duration, that we were only talking about one element, and I think it would strengthen our ability to support you and support the President and perhaps gain some more votes if we had it all laid out for us. It was all put together in a package. I'm not trying to get into a legal argument with you or the President about legal authority. I'm talking about good policy. So I just offer that observation to you and hope that you'll take that back to the President.
Congressman, thank you. I will. I understand what you're saying.
Thank you very much, sir. The Chair recognizes Mr. Gallego for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Secretary, thank you for hanging out and staying. I know that many times when this row gets to ask questions, the witness has to leave, so I appreciate the courtesy. Very quickly, when we're talking about strategy, I mean, one of the things that I hear is that we're very capable of winning battles, but in the long run, we lose the war. That's certainly the impression that so many of the Iraq war, the second Iraq war veterans have in the district that I represent. And as you know, it's a district that it's bigger than 29 states. I mean, it's about 24% or so of the land area of Texas. It's a huge swath. Disparate opinions, but there seems to be a good consensus that, the strategy that we outline is a strategy for a specific purpose, limited purpose, as opposed to a more big picture, long-term you know, and the perception is, you know, we've seen this movie before. What makes us think that the ending on this particular case is going to be any different than the endings that we've seen before? What makes this different from other times?
Well, first, I think the strategy that the President laid out corresponds very directly and clearly with the threat. And that threat has been identified and defined, I think, pretty clearly by the President and a number of us. This threat that ISIL presents to the United States, to our interests, to our allies, certainly to the region, we believe is very clear. Now, that said, the strategy that the President has announced that we are in the process of finalizing and in the process of implementing is different in many ways. Number one, it includes not just the strategic but the tactical buy-in of many partners, including partners in that region, including Muslim Arab countries. Second, it defines our role in a very clear way. As the President said, there will not be American combat responsibilities on the ground. We will have support missions where we can help, where we have unique capabilities along with our partners. Another essential part of this is a new Iraqi government that must bring an inclusiveness and a representation to not just the government, but the governing, where the new Prime Minister brings all the people in. I think the clear threat that ISIL presents to all of those countries is so clear now, and the common interests are so clear. That's different from anything I can recall in how we have, certainly in our recent history, how we've gone about anything.
One of the important things that I would ask you to keep in mind as you move forward is, as you talk about getting investments from others, is that we need to make sure that the American people are invested in this as well. I mean, you know more than most, even in this room, about what happens when an American public is not supportive of U.S. military action. And it's very important that the public be kept engaged and that they be supportive of the President's action and frankly, America's actions overseas.
Congressman, thank you. I get that. And I think, again, and in fact, I know one of the reasons the President wanted to make that address to the American public last week was for that very reason. And we'll continue to make that point. Thank you.
The Chair recognizes Ms. Davis for 4 minutes.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Secretary, for staying. I appreciate it. You know, we know that this is just fraught with complications, but my belief is that the consequences of doing nothing is also fraught with great risks, and I appreciate the fact of moving forward when we don't have all the answers clearly. You can tell from the questions here and the questions throughout the last few weeks and the way, frankly, that the vote came up. Good bipartisan, yes and no. And so that means that, you know, we all have a lot of work to do, I think, and I know you appreciate that. The President requested that authority in order to provide direct military training for our moderate Syrian rebels so that they have an alternative to ISIS. But the concern is partly the lack of unity among the disparate parts of those who have not chosen to join and are engaged in other areas. But I wonder if you could talk about that difficulty that we're going to face with whether it's dual alliances, the desire to defeat or to certainly weaken the Assad regime versus pushing back against ISIL. Have we ever trained and worked with a new group of troops who have that kind of dual goal, and perhaps it's not even dual? How do you see that coming together? I think the other concern is we obviously are looking for intel on the ground, and yet when it comes to air support and the intel on the ground, which is why we're training the the Syrian forces, first in local communities, and then hopefully to be more helpful in the broader goals, we're going to need to have more, whether it's partner support on the ground or U.S. support on the ground as well. And again, in terms of how we describe that strategy, I think that's very important to people, and that's another area that we really haven't heard much about.
Congresswoman, thank you. You ask a very important question, and you led with that, with the reality of it's complicated. I suspect members of Congress hear that maybe all too often on all issues, but this one is complicated, and your question does reflect that complication. Let me answer it this way. The moderate opposition forces that we will be vetting in that process, I think we talked at some length about this morning, how we would do that, so on. Are people in Syria, people who've lived in Syria, who are citizens of Syria, whose families have lived there for a long time. They are being and have been squeezed right now, are being squeezed by both the Assad regime and by ISIL and other terrorist groups. Right now, there is nothing that they have in any coordinated, organized way to give anyone in Syria who wants their country back and some kind of a future of peace and stability for their families and themselves, any hope or any possibilities to build on. So the moderate opposition understands it's not a choice between necessarily ISIL and Assad. Yes, ISIL is who we are focused on, and that is our primary mission and objective here, is to destroy ISIL. But the reality is the people that we will train have to deal with both of those realities. And they need a new political base that we believe will come from this possibility of organization and hope that we can help with a new moderate opposition.
The gentlelady's time has expired. The chair recognizes Mr. Langevin for 4 minutes.
Okay, there we are. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Secretary, I was one of those individuals who voted in favor of the resolution supporting the President's plan last night. I did it with mixed emotions, and I know it's not a perfect plan, but I think we need to start somewhere. And clearly, I believe ISIL does pose a threat to the homeland and to our allies around the world, based on the knowledge and testimony I've heard from those in this committee and my work on the Intelligence Committee. My concern is, though, that there are going to be boots on the ground that are going to be required, but we don't want them to be U.S. boots, and I support the President's position there. And I know you probably have talked about this already, but from my knowledge, I need to know the commitment that we have from our neighbors in the region in terms of what they are going to be able to do to put boots on the ground, because my constituents are really adamant that they don't want a big U.S. footprint involved in this with forces on the ground. But, and I know I'm concerned that, we hear that it's going to take up to a year potentially to train the forces that we're training in Syria, and that's obviously too long a time frame. If we had nations in the region who were willing to put boots on the ground now, at least to start with, it would be something to hold us over until those forces are trained, that are going to go in and actually battle ISIL on the ground. So would you comment on that?
Congressman, thank you. I will comment on it. First, on your question on coalition partners and what are they committed to do and when will they start doing it, and all the follow-up questions that go with it. Just as an example, I understand this morning, I have not seen the report, but I knew it was forthcoming, that President Hollande announced that France would be involved in military operations with us to destroy ISIL over Iraq. The next piece of this, Syria and so on, they've, as far as I know, have not made a decision. But that's just but one, since it's just happened this morning, an example of how we're having more and more of these coalition partners come forward. But the bigger question that you ask specifically about partners in the region, coalition partners in the region, how are they going to play a role as we take time to build these moderate Syrian forces in our train and equip program? Again, I would emphasize the importance of the entire dimension of the strategy. The train and equip portion of the moderate Syrian opposition is part of that. But so is a new Iraqi inclusive government to bring in the Sunnis and Shias so we can start to get the Sunni tribes in western Iraq back off of that support of ISIL and back with the government. Coalition partners, their involvement through military action, our airstrikes that will continue to help the Iraqi security forces continue to work the offensive, take back territory, hold territory that they had lost to ISIL, stabilize Iraq. All these different dimensions are in play at the same time. Yes, it's going to take some time to start training these people, the right people, the vetted people, in groups where we're not just training one or two terrorists or anti-terrorists or fighters, but groups have discipline, strategy, tactics, weapons that they can offer then a base of a beginning in Syria, not just a military option, but also political opposition to build around that. So it is going to take some time. But it's all these other elements of the strategy working at the same time toward the same end.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for coming today. Thank you for your patience and your candor. This is a great threat facing the people of our country. You're very concerned about it, and we share your concern. We know that this needs to be a partnership between you and the President and the Congress, and we want to continue to work with you, and we appreciate the further communications we know we're going to be receiving from you.
Congressman, thank you very much, and I very much appreciate the questions, the attention, and the support.
Thank you, sir, and this committee is adjourned.
Thank you.